A chance encounter between a lonely millionaire's blind daughter and a kind-hearted construction worker sparks a transformative journey of compassion, connection, and unexpected friendship that changes their lives forever. Richard Thornton was a man who had everything money could buy. At 45, he had built one of the most successful real estate development companies in the city, owned multiple properties, and drove cars that cost more than most people's homes. Today, he was inspecting the progress on his newest mansion, a sprawling estate that would showcase his wealth and status to the world. But for all his success, Richard was a lonely man. His wife had passed away 2 years ago, leaving him to raise their daughter Lily alone. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Lily was 8 years old and had been blind since birth. Despite having access to the best doctors money could buy, her condition was irreversible. Richard loved his daughter fiercely but struggled to connect with her. He compensated by showering her with expensive gifts and hiring the best caretakers, but he rarely spent quality time with her himself. Work was his escape, his way of avoiding the painful reminder that he couldn't fix his daughter's blindness. On this particular Tuesday, Richard's regular nanny had called in sick, forcing him to bring Lily to the construction site. He was irritated by the inconvenience, constantly checking his watch and barking orders into his phone while Lily stood quietly beside him, her small hand clutching her white cane. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Lily said softly, tugging at his expensive suit jacket. "Not now, Lily." "I'm in the middle of an important call," Richard snapped, turning away from her. Across the construction site, Marcus Johnson was taking his lunch break. At 35, Marcus had been working construction for over 15 years. He was skilled at his craft, but had always struggled financially, especially since becoming a single father to his son Jamal after his wife left them. Despite working 2 jobs, Marcus barely made enough to keep their small apartment and put food on the table. Marcus noticed the little girl with dark glasses standing alone while her father paced back and forth on his phone call. He could tell by her white cane that she was blind, and something about her reminded him of his own son. The same vulnerability, the same quiet dignity. He watched as she stumbled slightly, clearly tired and hungry. Without hesitation, Marcus stood up, grabbed his lunchbox, and walked over to her. "Hello there," Marcus said gently, kneeling down to Lily's level. "My name's Marcus. I work here building your new house." Lily turned toward his voice, her face lighting up at being acknowledged. "I'm Lily. My daddy's busy." Marcus glanced at Richard, who was still engrossed in his call, completely oblivious to his daughter's needs. "Are you hungry, Lily? I have some extra lunch I'd be happy to share." Lily nodded eagerly. "Yes, please. Daddy forgot to bring food for me." Marcus opened his lunchbox and took out half of his sandwich, carefully placing it in Lily's small hands. "It's peanut butter and honey. My son Jamal says it's the best sandwich in the world." "You have a son?" Lily asked, taking a small bite and smiling at the taste. "I do. He's 9, just a little older than you," Marcus replied warmly. "He loves stories and music, just like I bet you do." As Marcus continued talking to Lily, helping her find a comfortable place to sit and making sure she didn't spill her food, Richard finally ended his call and turned around. What he saw stopped him in his tracks. His daughter, laughing and chatting with a construction worker, happily eating a sandwich she hadn't brought from home. Richard's first reaction was anger. Who was this man touching his daughter? What was he feeding her? He strode over quickly, his expensive shoes kicking up dust. "What's going on here?" Richard demanded, his voice sharp with suspicion. Marcus stood up immediately, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Sorry, sir. I just noticed your daughter said she was hungry, so I offered her part of my lunch." "Daddy!" Lily exclaimed happily. "This is my new friend Marcus. He gave me a sandwich because I told him I was hungry." Richard looked from his daughter's smiling face to the humble lunchbox in Marcus's hands, then back to his own $3,000 suit, and the keys to his luxury car. Something uncomfortable stirred in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. Shame. That evening, Richard couldn't get the construction worker's kind gesture out of his mind. While his household staff prepared Lily for bed, Richard sat in his home office, staring out the window at the half-built mansion visible in the distance. He had everything money could buy, yet a construction worker who probably earned in a month what Richard made in a day had shown more kindness and attention to Lily than he had in weeks. The man had shared his modest lunch without hesitation, while Richard had been too busy with important business to feed his own daughter. The next morning, Richard arrived at the construction site earlier than usual. He spotted Marcus immediately, already hard at work, laying bricks for what would become the mansion's eastern wall. Richard approached him, conscious of the curious stares from other workers. "Mr. Johnson," Richard called out, remembering the name from the crew list he'd checked. "Could I have a word with you?" Marcus looked surprised, but set down his tools and walked over. "Yes, sir? Is there a problem with my work?" "No, not at all," Richard replied, suddenly feeling awkward. "I wanted to thank you for looking after Lily yesterday. It was very kind of you." Marcus smiled. "No need to thank me, sir. She's a wonderful little girl. Reminds me of my son. Same kind heart." "You have a son?" Richard asked, realizing he knew nothing about this man. "Yes, sir. Jamal. He's 9. It's just the two of us." Something in Marcus's tone made Richard ask, "Is everything all right? With your son, I mean." Marcus hesitated, pride warring with honesty. "We get by. Times are tough right now. Our apartment building is being converted to luxury condos, so we've got 60 days to find a new place, but we'll manage. We always do." Richard nodded, his mind racing. Without really planning it, he heard himself say, "Would you like to come to dinner tonight? Both of you. You and your son. Lily would love to have company." That evening, Marcus and Jamal arrived at Richard's current mansion, clearly intimidated by its grandeur. Jamal, a bright-eyed boy with his father's warm smile, clutched a small, wrapped gift. Jamal wanted to bring something for Lily, Marcus explained as the housekeeper showed them in. The dinner started awkwardly, with Richard stiff and formal, unused to casual conversation. But when Lily appeared and recognized Marcus's voice, her face lit up with joy. "Marcus, you came back!" she exclaimed, making her way toward the sound of his voice with remarkable precision. "I sure did, Miss Lily," Marcus replied warmly. "And I brought someone special for you to meet. This is my son, Jamal." Jamal stepped forward, gently taking Lily's hand. "Hi, Lily. I brought you something." He placed the small package in her hands. With careful fingers, Lily unwrapped the gift to reveal a handmade bracelet of wooden beads. "It has different textures on each bead," Jamal explained, "so you can feel the patterns even if you can't see them." Tears welled in Richard's eyes as he watched his daughter's face transform with delight. When was the last time he had given her a gift that truly considered her experience of the world rather than just its monetary value? As the evening progressed, Richard observed Marcus with his son. The easy affection, the inside jokes, the genuine interest Marcus took in everything Jamal said. Despite having so little materially, there was a richness to their relationship that made Richard's heart ache with recognition of what he and Lily were missing. Over dessert, Richard learned that Marcus had been working construction since he was 18, that he took night classes in architectural design when he could afford them, and that he had innovative ideas about accessible housing that he sketched in a worn notebook during his lunch breaks. "I've always dreamed of designing homes that work better for people with different needs," Marcus explained. "Spaces that don't just look good but actually improve people's lives." 2 weeks later, Richard called Marcus into his office at the construction site. The walls were now up on the new mansion, and work was progressing rapidly. I've been thinking a lot about our conversation, Richard began. About your designs for accessible housing. Marcus nodded cautiously. Yes, sir. Richard pushed a folder across the desk. I'd like to offer you a position in my company, not as a construction worker, but as a design consultant specializing in accessible architecture. Marcus stared at him in disbelief. Mr. Thornton, I don't have a degree. I've never— You have something more valuable, Richard interrupted. You have vision and first-hand experience. My company has been focused on luxury for luxury's sake, but you've helped me see there's a market we're missing. Homes that combine beauty with true functionality for people with different needs. He slid another folder across the desk. This is the deed to a small house in my newest development. It has 3 bedrooms and is fully accessible. The school district is excellent. I'd like you and Jamal to have it. Marcus shook his head, overwhelmed. I can't accept that. It's too much. It's not charity, Richard insisted. It's an investment in my new design consultant. And— He paused, his voice softening. It's a thank you for showing me what I've been missing with Lily. 1 year later, the morning sun illuminated the freshly painted sign reading Thornton Inclusive Homes as dozens of people gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. What had once been an empty field on the outskirts of the city's most desirable neighborhood now hosted the first housing development specifically designed to accommodate people with various disabilities while maintaining aesthetic beauty and luxury. The project represented not just a business venture, but the profound transformation of a man who had once measured success only in dollars and square footage. Richard Thornton stood at the podium, dressed in a suit no less expensive than those he'd worn a year ago, but somehow he carried himself differently now. The hard lines around his mouth had softened, and his eyes, once constantly scanning for the next business opportunity, now regularly sought out his daughter's face in the crowd. Beside him stood Marcus Johnson, no longer in worn work clothes, but in a tailored suit that complemented his new position as head of the accessibility division of Thornton Enterprises. When I began this project, Richard spoke into the microphone, his voice carrying across the attentive crowd, I thought I was simply diversifying my business portfolio. What I didn't realize was that I was rebuilding my own life in the process. He paused, emotion making his voice rough around the edges. Sometimes the people who change our lives the most are those we'd least expect. For me, that person was Marcus Johnson. Richard gestured toward Marcus, who stepped forward with quiet dignity. The crowd applauded, and journalists snapped photos of the unlikely pair, the millionaire developer and the former construction worker, now partners and friends. Behind them sat an array of newly completed homes, each one combining luxury with thoughtful, accessible design. Wide doorways, zero-step entrances, tactile signage, smart home systems with voice control, and beautifully designed sensory gardens were just some of the features that made these homes unique in the market. What the audience couldn't see was the journey that had brought them to this moment. Over the past year, Richard had opened not just his company, but his life to Marcus's influence. Initially, skeptical executives had watched in amazement as sales inquiries poured in, not just from families with disabled members, but from forward-thinking buyers who recognized the value of homes designed to adapt to changing needs over time. The accessible luxury market, which Richard's competitors had ignored, proved to be remarkably profitable. But the real transformation had occurred within the walls of Richard's own home. The mansion that had once felt like a museum, beautiful but cold, now echoed with laughter and conversation. Weekly dinners with Marcus and Jamal had become a tradition, and the staff, who had rarely seen Richard smile in the years following his wife's death, now witnessed a man rediscovering joy in the simplest moments. Near the front row of the audience sat 8-year-old Lily, her face turned toward the sound of her father's voice, a smile playing on her lips. Beside her sat Jamal, now 10, who had appointed himself Lily's personal narrator and friend. He leaned over to whisper in her ear, describing the colorful scene before them, the red ribbon stretching across the model home's entrance, the cluster of balloons dancing in the spring breeze, the proud expression on his father's face as Mr. Thornton introduced him to the crowd. Lily reached for Jamal's hand, squeezing it in thanks. Their friendship had blossomed over countless afternoons, spent exploring the sensory garden Richard had installed at home, Jamal describing the colors of flowers, while Lily taught him to identify plants by their scent and texture. Together, they had tested every feature of the model homes, with Lily pointing out what worked for her and what didn't, her insights proving invaluable to the design team. "The showcase home you'll tour today," Richard continued in his speech, "incorporates ideas from my greatest consultant, my daughter Lily." The crowd turned toward the little girl, who beamed at the mention of her name. "She reminded us that accessibility isn't about meeting minimum requirements. It's about creating spaces where everyone can thrive." As Marcus stepped up to the microphone to explain the technical aspects of the homes, Richard watched him with profound respect. In the beginning, some of Richard's executive team had been skeptical of Marcus's appointment, viewing it as their boss's eccentric charity project. But Marcus had quickly silenced the doubters, bringing to the table not just his self-taught design skills, but a perspective that had been entirely missing from the company. His night school education in architecture, combined with years of hands-on construction experience and his innate creativity, had resulted in solutions that more traditionally trained architects had overlooked. The transformation extended beyond business. Richard had begun to take real interest in Lily's daily life, not just coordinating her care from a distance, but actively participating in it. He'd learned to read Braille alongside her, fumbling with the raised dots until his fingers grew more sensitive. He'd discovered her passion for music and started taking her to concerts where he would whisper descriptions of the orchestra in her ear. Their relationship, once defined by awkward silences and his discomfort with her disability, had blossomed into genuine connection. For Marcus, the changes had been equally profound. Moving from their cramped apartment to the beautiful home in Richard's development had given both him and Jamal space to flourish. With financial security came the opportunity for Marcus to complete his education, enrolling in formal architectural courses that refined his natural talent. The worn notebook of sketches had evolved into professional blueprints and 3D models, while his ideas about accessibility had expanded into a comprehensive design philosophy that was rapidly gaining attention throughout the industry. After the speeches concluded and the ceremonial ribbon was cut, the crowd dispersed to tour the model homes. Richard found himself momentarily alone, watching as Marcus expertly guided a group of potential buyers through the showcase property. Through the large windows, he could see Marcus gesturing toward the specially designed kitchen, explaining how the adjustable height counters and pull-out shelving made cooking accessible to everyone, regardless of mobility. "He's a natural," came a voice beside him. Richard turned to find Elena Rodriguez, his chief financial officer, watching the tour with an impressed expression. "I have to admit, I questioned your judgment when you brought him on. But the man has vision." He showed me what I was missing, Richard replied simply, "both in business and in life." Later that evening, after the press had departed and the sales team had collected contact information from dozens of interested buyers, the two families gathered in the backyard of the showcase home. The children played in the sensory garden, Jamal describing a butterfly's colors to Lily as it landed on a lavender bush. Richard poured glasses of lemonade for the adults and watched as Marcus loosened his tie, looking both exhausted and exhilarated. 27 deposits on the first day," Marcus said, shaking his head in disbelief. "And 15 of those buyers don't even have family members with disabilities." "Because you created homes everyone wants to live in," Richard replied. "That's the genius of it. Not segregated special housing, but universal design that makes life better for everyone." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn, Richard reflected on how far they had come. A year ago, he had been a lonely man, living in a beautiful shell, surrounded by possessions but disconnected from genuine human warmth. Marcus had been struggling to keep his small family afloat, his talents unrecognized and his future uncertain. One simple act of kindness, a shared sandwich, a moment of compassion for a hungry child, had set in motion changes neither man could have predicted. Their lives had become intertwined in ways that transcended business partnership, forming a chosen family bound by mutual respect and genuine affection. As the evening deepened, the adults moved to the patio where Richard raised, his glass in a toast. 1 year ago today, he said, his voice thick with emotion, Marcus fed my daughter half a peanut butter sandwich and changed my life forever. The others raised their glasses as Marcus smiled, his eyes reflecting the golden sunset. And to second, chances, he added, for all of us. And new beginnings, added Richard, watching as Lily and Jamal returned from the garden, their faces alight with laughter. Because this is just the start. Indeed, plans were already underway for the next phase of Thornton Inclusive Homes, with locations secured in 3 additional cities. Marcus's designs had attracted attention from accessibility advocates nationwide, and Richard had established a foundation to provide housing grants for families with disabled members who couldn't afford market rates. What had begun as a business venture had evolved into a mission that fulfilled both men in ways that transcended financial success. As night fell, the 2 families remained on the patio, sharing stories and dreams under the emerging stars. The showcase house, which would welcome its first real family the following week, seemed to embrace them in its thoughtfully designed spaces, a physical manifestation of how environments shaped by compassion could nurture human connection. In the distance, the lights of the city twinkled, illuminating the new development, a monument not just to innovative design but to the transformative power of human kindness. What had begun with a hungry child and a shared sandwich had blossomed into something that would touch countless lives for generations to come, changing not just 2 families, but reshaping an industry's understanding of what truly makes a house a home. The greatest transformation, however, wasn't visible in architectural plans or balance sheets. It was evident in the way Richard now looked at his daughter, not with the pained avoidance of the past, but with genuine delight in who she was. It showed in the confident set of Marcus's shoulders as he discussed design concepts as an equal with executives who once would have ignored him. It revealed itself in the easy friendship between 2 children from vastly different worlds who had taught the adults around them the most valuable lesson of all, that true wealth lay not in what one possessed, but in what one gave away. As the evening drew to a close, Richard gazed at the gathering, this improbable family created not by blood but by choice, and knew with absolute certainty that no mansion he had ever built had brought him the fulfillment he now found in these relationships. In opening his life to Marcus and Jamal, he had not only changed their circumstances but had rebuilt his own heart, brick by brick, into something stronger and more beautiful than before.